The dust of Red Valley rose, thick and slow that evening, glowing orange in the long stretch of sunset, as Marshal Hayes rode into the ranch yard with someone small and trembling slumped over the back of his horse. Little Emma, barely 5 and soft-voiced as sunrise, peeked around her father's leg when he dismounted, her curls bouncing as she whispered, "Daddy, is she dying?" The cowboy Jonah Hale, broad-shouldered and worn by loss, didn't answer at first. He was staring at the young woman chained at the wrists, ankles bruised and dress torn to threads, her face hidden beneath dust and fear. She didn't look much older than 20, but the weight she carried on her back was old. The kind of weight that made a person flinch even when no one touched them. Jonah lifted her down gently, far more gently than anyone had handled her in a long time. "She's hurt," he murmured, mostly to himself. "But dying? Not if I can help it." The woman tried to speak, but her breath was ragged, eyes darting at the horses, the barn, the wide sky, as if she expected punishment to fall from all directions. Emma reached out her tiny hand, brushing the girl's arm with a softness that made the stranger freeze. "It's okay," Emma said, her voice trembling but brave. "Daddy fixes everyone." Jonah swallowed hard at that. He had once believed it too, before he lost Emma's mother to the fever 3 winters ago. But something in the chained woman's shaking form told him he had to try, not for his own soul, not even for hers, but for the little girl watching, who deserved to see that kindness still meant something in this cruel, wild land. He unlocked the shackles slowly, each click echoing like thunder, and the woman let out a choked sob the moment her wrists were free. "Name?" Jonah asked softly. She lowered her gaze. I don't got one anymore." Jonah frowned. "Everyone's got a name. Not slaves," she whispered. Emma gasped, not out of fear, but heartbreak. "But you're not one now," the child said with a certainty that startled even Jonah. The woman looked up as though the words were a miracle. Her hair fell across her face in tangled strands, and Jonah could finally see her eyes haunted. "Yes, but alive. We'll find you a name," he said, "but first, let's get you inside." When Jonah carried her into the warm glow of the ranch house, she shook violently, unused to any place that didn't smell of iron or rot. Emma hurried ahead, proudly dragging one of her mother's old dresses from a cedar chest. "She can have this one," she said. "It's pretty. She needs to feel pretty." Jonah hesitated, throat tightening. The dress was the last thing of his wife's he had never given away. But his daughter was right. If this girl was to have a second life, she needed to step into something made for the living. He handed the dress to her gently. She held it as though it were spun glass. "For me," she whispered. "If you want it," Jonah replied. "If I want..." She couldn't finish. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she clutched the fabric to her chest. Jonah stepped back to give her privacy, and Emma slipped her small hand into his. "Daddy," she whispered, "we saved her." He lifted Emma, pressing his forehead to hers. "We're trying, sweetheart. That's all anybody can do." When the woman emerged, wearing the dress, something subtle but mighty shifted in the air. Gone was the ghost dragged behind a marshal's horse. She wasn't whole, not yet, but she stood taller, steadier, as though the fabric stitched her to the world again. "Do you want a name?" Jonah asked. She nodded. Emma jumped excitedly. "I know. Hope. 'Cause Daddy said people need hope to stay alive." Jonah smiled gently. "Hope," he repeated. "Do you like that?" The woman's lips trembled into the first true smile she'd shown. "Yes," she whispered. "Hope." And just like that, she wasn't a chained stranger anymore. She was Hope, a person reborn right in his living room. Over the next days, Jonah tended her wounds, feeding her warm broth and letting her rest in Emma's old trundle bed. He learned she came from a raided settlement far east, taken by outlaws who traded human lives like cattle. She had survived things Jonah didn't dare ask about, but she also laughed softly at Emma's stories, cried when she first saw a sunrise without iron around her wrists, and learned to brush the horses gently instead of flinching at their shadows. The ranch, once heavy with silence and grief, slowly filled with the sound of healing, small, fragile, but real. Yet trouble always follows mercy in the West. One evening, as Jonah fixed the fence, riders appeared on the ridge. Outlaws the same kind that had traded away Hope's freedom. Emma ran to him in fear. Hope froze in the doorway, dress rippling in the wind. The leader spat in the dirt. "We're here for the girl. She belongs to us." Jonah stepped forward, jaw clenched. "Not anymore. She's property." Jonah cocked his rifle slowly. "She's a person, and she's under my protection." The standoff felt long enough to stretch the sky. The outlaws shifted nervously. They had expected a broken man, not a father with fire in his eyes. One sudden gust of wind blew sand across the yard, and the lead outlaw scowled. "Ain't worth the trouble," he grunted. The riders turned and thundered off, disappearing into the orange dust. Hope collapsed to her knees, sobbing into her hands. Emma threw her arms around her. Jonah knelt beside them, placing a steady hand on Hope's shoulder. "No one owns you," he said softly. "Not yesterday, not today, not ever again." Hope looked up at him with gratitude so fierce it nearly knocked the breath out of him. She wasn't asking for rescue anymore, she was asking for a life. And Jonah, for the first time since his wife's death, felt like he still had something to give. That night, the three of them sat on the porch, watching the stars push through the darkness. Emma leaned against Hope, already treating her like family. Jonah looked at the two of them, the daughter who needed a mother, the young woman who needed a home, and wondered if fate had brought them together for a reason beyond mercy. Hope whispered, "Thank you for giving me a name." Jonah shook his head gently. "You earned it. All I did was see you." And in that quiet moment, under the wide western sky, it was clear, she hadn't just been saved, she had been reborn. And sometimes, that was the greatest miracle the frontier could offer. If you enjoyed this powerful story and want more emotional, cinematic western tales like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because every week a new story rides in and you won't want to miss a single one.